Welcome back to the Practical Mysticism channel. Today's topic is obstacles to grace. The way I define living from grace is that it is the effect of living as and from your true nature or true spiritual identity. Living from grace gives rise to effortless, harmonious, inspiring experience. In a state of grace, the mind is still, and joy, gratitude, and generosity shine forth from within. All bodily needs are met, the crooked places are made straight, and life is a flowing, ever present moment experience. For a deeper presentation and detailed content about living from grace, see Practical Mysticism video or blog posts numbers 8 through 10. This state of grace is attained through right identification of self as spirit and the releasing of all erroneous beliefs, concepts, and assumptions. Mystical practice is a two-sided coin of choosing the true and releasing the false. The content in this post builds on the content presented in previous posts. To garner the most benefit from the Obstacles to Grace series of posts, you may want to first view Practical Mysticism posts 5 through 7 about the understanding, acceptance, and application of mystical principles, and Practical Mysticism posts 8 through 10, which address the topics of dominion and grace through the application of these principles. These posts can be found in written format on my website at the link in the notes or on the Practical Mysticism YouTube channel. As a side note, based on inner guidance, I've decided to create shorter posts so they can be shared more frequently. Until now, I have created much longer posts, and from start to finish, they were taking about a month to get published. I would compose the post in written form, edit it multiple times, create and then insert graphics, post it in written blog format on my website, time the sections of the written posts, create a video with timed images, add the audio script, edit it, denoise it, and then post it to YouTube. So it's quite a long process. I'll actually still engage in the same process, but instead of one long written or video post, I'll make multiple smaller posts. In alignment with this decision, the discussion of the items on the upcoming list of 10 reasons for lack of application of metaphysical and mystical principles will be broken down into multiple posts. Thank you for listening to the explanation of this inwardly guided decision, which I trust will be for the highest good of all. Through many years of working with and observing others, as well as by observing my own journey, I have identified the main obstacle to living from grace as the lack of application of metaphysical and mystical principles. I have categorized this lack of application into roughly 10 categories, which I have listed below. Number 1, lack of understanding of metaphysics and principles. Number 2, lack of acceptance or doubt about those principles. 3, falling asleep in the conditioning of material consciousness or the dualistic mind. 4, lack of awareness. 5, lack of zeal and or commitment. Number 6, complacency, coasting, level of dissatisfaction not intense enough to foster motivation or a type of laziness. Number 7, closed-mindedness. Number 8, lack of inner listening and or trusting. Number 9, fear, especially of the unknown. Number 10, pride, a sense of already knowing everything or a sense of threat to identity. Though there is some overlap among the listed reasons for lack of application, I thought it would be helpful to look at some of the reasons from slightly different angles of discussion. Furthermore, the repetition of ideas is helpful and even necessary for the efficacy of understanding and application. Now I'm going to repeat the 10 obstacles to grace again, and then I'll briefly flesh out each one in more detail. So the following 10 obstacles to grace can also be defined as reasons which cause us to hold back from the application of the metaphysical and mystical principles. So again, 1, lack of understanding of metaphysics and mystical principles. 2, lack of acceptance of those principles or doubt about them. Number 3, falling asleep in the conditioning of material consciousness or the dualistic mind. 4, lack of awareness that we have fallen asleep in material consciousness. 5, lack of zeal or commitment to the process. Number 6, complacency, coasting, lack of motivation or laziness. Number 7, closed-mindedness. Number 8, lack of inner listening and or lack of trust in that inner voice. Number 9, fear, especially of what we call the unknown. 10, pride, a sense of threat to identity or a feeling that I don't like to have what I know challenged. Let's look in more detail at the reason number 1. Number 1, lack of understanding of metaphysical principles. So this first reason, lack of understanding of metaphysics and principles, is pretty self-explanatory. It's quite difficult, if not impossible, to apply the metaphysics and principles if you don't understand them. The foundation of application is understanding, particularly the understanding of the metaphysics and nature of self, source, mind, and world. I've already presented a lot of information about the metaphysics and principles in previous posts, so rather than reiterate them here, I refer you to any of the past 10 posts, and in particular to posts 5 through 7, Understanding, Acceptance, and Application, and posts 8 through 10 on Grace and Dominion. Now we'll look in a little more detail at number 2, lack of acceptance or doubt. Even if the principles and metaphysics are understood, they may be doubted or rejected due to their radical nature and departure from commonly held beliefs and assumptions. The overwhelming majority of people do not consciously operate from grace, nor do they have any knowledge of metaphysical principles. Mass consciousness operates at the level of the polarized mind, identifying self as the body and world as matter. All of the related strategies for living are based on these identifications. So it can feel very risky to adopt and apply principles that are scarcely known by the world. It can feel difficult to trust the metaphysics and principles because those who follow them are in a very tiny minority, and we're more accustomed to following the herd. The efficacy of the application of the principles must be proven in one's own experience, and this can only occur through application. In order to be applied, the principles must at first be, well, at least provisionally accepted. If there's resistance to acceptance and application, I have found it helpful to think of the process as a fun experiment, to perhaps approach it like a curious scientist. Following acceptance and application of the principles, Spirit will convince you of its invisible presence and grace. Number 3, falling asleep in the conditioning of material consciousness or the dualistic mind. Perhaps while we're being exposed to metaphysical truths through reading, listening, or counseling, the principles are well in our awareness in those moments. However, once we move back into our daily lives, it is easy to fall back asleep, so to speak, into our former modes of thinking, reacting, and behaving. The past conditioning of the lower mind, the mind that rules the mass consciousness, is very strong and seems to run on autopilot. However, it is in the midst of our daily lives where the rubber must hit the road in the application of these principles. Transformation to grace, in other words, living as and from our true nature, cannot occur by occasional listening or reading. Grace makes itself known by the combination of the withdrawal of reliance on the belief systems and modus operandi of the dualistic mind, and complete dependence on and trust in spirit. Number 4, lack of awareness. Lack of awareness ties into number 3, which was falling asleep in the conditioning of material consciousness or the dualistic mind. Falling asleep into former conditioning is common and nearly unavoidable in this process. It's the lack of awareness that one has fallen asleep in the old conditioning that causes delay in the experience of grace. This process requires a very high level of awareness, a continual watching of one's thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and behaviors. By remaining aware of thoughts and beliefs, particularly about identity, we can change them. By being aware of emotions, we can trace them back to the belief that has triggered the emotion so the belief can be let go. By observing our own behavior and being aware of the motivation for the behavior, we can uncover what belief system and what identity we are subscribing to, and in what we are investing our dependence and trust. Today, we've looked at 4 of the 10 obstacles to application, which are in turn obstacles to grace. Let's list the 10 obstacles here once again, and then next time we'll pick up with number 5. So I'm equating the obstacles to grace with the lack of application of metaphysical principles and practices. 1. Lack of understanding of the metaphysics and the principles. 2. Lack of acceptance of the principles and metaphysics or doubt about them. 3. Falling asleep in the conditioning of material consciousness. 4. Lack of awareness that one has fallen asleep into the conditioning of the past. 5. Lack of zeal or commitment to the process. 6. Complacency, coasting, lack of motivation or laziness. 7. Closed-mindedness. 8. Lack of inner listening and or trusting in the inner voice. 9. Fear, especially of the unknown. And 10. Pride, or a sense of feeling that what you know is challenged, or a sense of threat to your identity. So, have you been able to identify any of the 10 obstacles as relevant in your own journey? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you'd like one-to-one assistance with this material, please reach out to me using the contact form on my website. The link is in the notes. And may the peace, joy, freedom, and inspiration of grace be your ever-present experience. Thank you so very much. Written transcripts of my videos, including the graphics and images, are available for your use on my website at the link in the notes. Please subscribe and share so together we can assist in the great awakening to truth. Thank you.